Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another session with the ESM podcast, the Everything Service Management podcast. I'm Daniel Gilby, joined as always by my co-host, Sunil Dugal. Really excited about today's session as we're taking a slightly different slant away from Everything Service Management in ESM specifically, and Sunil will tell you about this in a moment. We wanted to bring somebody to the stage, so to speak, to talk a little bit around IT training and what people might need to think about, things to consider if they're looking to develop their career in IT. Sunil, I know Simon's been a long-time colleague and friend of yours. Maybe you'd like to give us a little bit of color and background around that before we ask Simon to introduce himself and get into the session.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dan. So I have known Simon for more than 20 years now, and we worked together for, I think it must have been 9 or 10 years. So right. I spent part of my life on the journey that Simon has taken and will tell us a bit more about. But Dan, as you said, we did a poll and we asked people what they wanted to hear about on the podcast. And one of the things that scored quite highly was actually around training and development. And so we thought, what a great opportunity to bring somebody who knows an awful lot about that, particularly for people looking to get into the IT industry for the first time. So disclaimer done. Over to you, Simon. Maybe you can give us an introduction to yourself.
Well, it's brilliant to be here and lovely to share some of my experience in the last 25 years of helping people into the tech sector. And thanks, Dan, and thanks, Donald, for inviting me. So, basically started a business called Just IT Training in 2001 and felt that might be something that suited me. I was working in the graduate market before then, and the graduates that were coming out of uni would find it difficult to get a job. And people like Sunil, who was actually initially a candidate for the program, came to us and paid quite a lot of money, Sunil. Do you remember how much?
I'm still paying it off. Yeah.
Quite a lot of money for a boot camp, what we call now is a boot camp. And this was an accelerated program for graduates who were looking to upskill into technical areas like Cisco and Microsoft and A+, basically moving into the help desk environment, which was the area of most employment for entry-level jobs and has continued to be over many years. So we're doing that for graduates, people who wanted to get on the ladder, the IT ladder. And we did that through this sort of 12, 15-week boot camp, covering some certifications, some soft skills, and also a work experience program for 6 weeks or so. Really effective. One of the first companies in the UK to do that well. And we continued that program of boot camps for 20 years. Helped about 10,000 people into the market.
Fantastic stuff. Fantastic. So looking back when you started that, what was the specific sort of opportunity that you saw, not just for candidates, but for the organizations that you were helping place these candidates into? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, on the candidate side, one of the things I found that we were doing more often than not was giving people the confidence to actually believe in themselves. Maybe they had a degree. I think yours was maths, was it? So no, engineering. Engineering. And, perhaps moving from engineering into IT was something of a challenge for employers to believe in. But once they actually gained these certifications, CompTIA, A+, and some Microsoft certifications, we're going back quite a long time ago now, and also maybe a Cisco CCNA certification, which I think you did very well at, Sunil, and you passed. When most people failed, you passed. So you still feel very emotional about that, don't you, Sunil?
I do. It's still on my LinkedIn profile. Thank you. Yeah.
So this really labelled those young enthusiastic people as keen to work in that area of tech support and network support. And so it really was a fantastic program. And they were able to go out there and get interviews and start on salaries which were not the best, but it gave them that chance to get on the ladder. And we have people on over 100,000 plus now who started on those programs before, and it's been a real success. From an employer's perspective, what they're doing is getting people who are committed to that sector. They've put their money where their mouth is. They've gained some certifications which would help them if they're at MSP to have some good partnership relationships with people like Microsoft. And it really gave that employer a chance to see the candidate before they employed them, because it was a 6-week work placement, 4 to 6 week work placement. And that was a chance for them to assess the candidate to assess the employer, and really get that sort of understanding. And then that work placement often went to a job, or it just helped to build the profile of that candidate's CV.
Gave them a bit more experience, right? That's a really great point you made about the organizations. They're getting somebody who's committed, right, to wanting to be in that industry, wanting to develop their careers, and arguably could see themselves with said company for a number of years to, kickstart, if you like, their career in the space before they find perhaps their niche.
Can I ask a question, Simon, about so you must have seen when you set up Just IT Training back in 2001, I think you said, didn't you? You must have seen a disconnect between a demand on the employer side. So, you must have seen an opportunity for people to find work, and the candidate side of things, and almost an inability, if I can say that word, to bridge the gap. You had demand on from employers, and you had candidates with an ability, but actually they couldn't quite get there. Is that how you saw it at the time?
Yeah, I think I've worked in the recruitment market for 25 years. We had a training company and a recruitment company. You might remember this, Sonil. In fact, I understood you went from the training program to running and being the managing director of the recruitment company. Is that right?
That is true, yes.
But
this is about your knowledge, Simon, not mine today. So,
okay. But actually, the disconnect, I think, in recruitment is enormous. I don't think people still know how to get a job. It's a skill to get a job. And often they're thinking of their weaknesses, not their strengths. So the ability to communicate for the average candidate to communicate to an employer their strengths, I still think is an area of opportunity. And so we see this sort of crazy recruitment world where people are making assessments on the first 30 seconds or 60 seconds of an interview. And it's just not really evolved as I would have guessed it would, the whole sort of matching side. So really, I think what we did with the boot camp is we gave that because we were literally matching with 10 weeks experience or 15 weeks experience of the candidate. We knew about their timekeeping, we knew about their communication skills, we had the certification results. We knew all those things that made us able to explain to an employer that was a strong, an average, or a weak candidate. And different candidates suited different employers. So it's a really good program. It worked very well. And I still think that the recruitment market is sort of not really working very well. That would be a view.
So when you met with a trainee for your course, I mean, and I obviously have been involved in this quite a lot, but really this is, as I said, about your sort of experience. What made you think this person will benefit from the investment in themselves, and maybe somebody not quite, so ready for it?
And can I just add to that question? When you were meeting with these candidates, people who wanted to become a trainee on the course, were there sort of specific traits that would stand out to you? And you'd think, this person, because of X, Y, or Z, they're gonna do really well here, just because of perhaps their background in another industry. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're a commercial company. We're an independent training provider. We weren't supported by government. There wasn't an apprenticeship program out there. This, as you say, is 2001, Twin Towers time. And so we're struggling as a business to get off the ground. So the first question is, can the candidate afford the program? Now, we did actually change that a bit. We changed it to where candidates put a smaller percentage of the cost of the course up front and the rest when they get a job. We did that after about 8 or so years. But at the beginning, it was, can they afford the course? I guess that's natural enough from a commercial point of view. Then we're looking for soft skills, always soft skills. We're looking for retail, some sort of experience around people, because of course, help desk, tech support is requiring that listening ability, the ability to understand the problem and give a solution. And people normally could build their technical skills with the A+ qualification over a 5 or 6 week period. So those soft skills, which often took a lot longer, if they weren't there, we would screen the candidate out. Sometimes it was about confidence, so we tried to sort of big them up. And often that sort of energy we gave them, positive energy, such a big thing in life, isn't it? Made the difference with somebody who was quiet and somebody who could then speak up. So there was that sort of building of the candidate over time. But if they're soft skills at the beginning, just weren't there, we wouldn't take the people on the program. And then just the joy of dealing with people's problems, because tech support is all around problem solving. So if you're not somebody who likes to deal with people's problems, this wouldn't suit you very well. So somebody who's actually always wanting to learn, who's analytical, that sort of skill set, we try and pick that out from their degree, because at that time it's just about graduates. That was our focus market right at the beginning. We were taking graduates, people with a 2-2. I mean, you've got a high degree, son. I mean, this isn't about you, but the average graduate was average, literally, and they were the people who would pay the money and get on the program and then get into the tech career they wanted. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, definitely. So just to summarize that, problem solving skills, a degree of empathy and being able to listen, willingness to help, so altruism, arguably, and then having some sort of degree of competence around learning new skills and sort of translating those things across. And I would suggest that all of those attributes are still 100% applicable today, albeit it sort of bleeds onto the kind of next question we've sort of teed up for you, Simon, is about how sort of back in the early 2000s, CompTIA A+, Network Plus, CCNA, MS Server, all of those qualifications, as technology has changed significantly in the last 2 decades. Curious as to kind of your thoughts on, well, how you see that sort of as today versus back then.
Yeah. Well, I think Microsoft was a player back then in terms of the sort of involvement they had in the skills market, and they used to sort of talk to us about their certifications, and we used to promote those. I seem to remember something called an MCSE in a box, which is an interesting idea. But everybody sort of said, I want to get an MCSE, and we always felt that was overqualified. So the A+ and a couple of MCPs, those were the things that were needed then. Nowadays, CompTIA and A+ still seems to be the product of choice. CompTIA has sort of continued to grow in its attractiveness. They have a very wide range of products now in all sorts of sectors like cyber and many others. And I think they're a really, really good example of a company that's given a lot of energy. They built up some 200 billion or so of income across the world, and they are, I think, an excellent organization. And, I've always partnered with CompTIA. So the entry level A+ continues to be a really important product, and then maybe a Microsoft qualification as well. Things like Cisco, maybe after 2-3 years, people might want to follow those routes, and cybersecurity and all sorts of things like that. But that entry level first step help desk role continues to be an area of interest. There is other areas which have now evolved, which we're going to talk about, I think, coming along in things like data and also programming. But that was the sort of change that's taken place on the infrastructure side of things.
But let's talk about those. We're going to talk a bit about AI, right? And maybe some of the threats that AI poses to the service desk, or that route in, I think. But let's just save that for a bit later on. Talk about some of those other areas that people could have gone into, Simon, because I know back in the day, there was the infrastructure program that Just IT ran, but there was also a web program as well, because web was the shiny new thing at the time. Then I think you had a development orientated program as well. So, how has the demand from employers changed, and so therefore some of the technical skills that candidates need? How's that matched that employer change, if it makes sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, the web area and jobs around programming have never really, for me, been as easy to get as tech support entry roles are. And people have always wanted to do those jobs, but actually to build the technical skills and have the competence that's required, maybe that soft skills and also that incredible mind, the ability to create a portfolio using all the different languages which are needed. That's just a scarcer skill set. But it doesn't stop people coming along and wanting to pay money to get on that ladder. So probably for every person in infrastructure we were supporting, we'd have every 2 people in infrastructure would have 1 person in the web side of things. And I sort of question where our entry-level programmers are going to be in the future because of AI and things like that. And there's a whole discussion there around really where the government spends its money. These different sectors that they've said there's skill shortages on, but is it practical in 3 years' time to be spending that money on developers and getting people into that market? That's a sort of, it is changing very quickly. But does that answer your question? I'm not sure I have.
Well, I think sort of, but let's focus on something you just said there, which is very interesting, right? Which is where the government spends its money. Okay? Because actually the story of Just IT sort of shifted a little bit, didn't it, from graduates and people moving, via the training route to an apprenticeships type scheme. Now, I can't profess to know very much about that, but maybe you could tell us a bit about it, because that I would suggest is indicative of where the government's spending its money to try and help grassroots develop these skills, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we said boot camps were vital for this industry. We've been delivering for 20 years boot camps, but it took till 2020, 21 for government to start to support that sector, which was very frustrating. But they have got there. Apprenticeships.
So sorry, you were doing it for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And then, 20 years later, the government turn up.
I know. It's just bizarre.
That's about the speed that they move, though, isn't it? I think.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
And so people always criticize boot camps because they were self-funded. Yeah. And so you had companies that were taking money from people, often the wrong people, because they didn't screen for soft skills or the ability to learn technical skills. And so there was this problem with reputation on these boot camps. But then in 2021, we got this money starting to come through, and now it's about 1.5 billion that is put into that package, which has been delivered over a number of years. Now, people are still questioning whether that's a good investment. It's still early days for boot camps, government funded. That's been around for 2 years. So we are still seeing the outputs of that, and some people are questioning the actual outputs that are coming from that investment. But I still believe if you go for the right company, government should invest well into that boot camp sector. Short courses, what we're calling 12, 16 weeks, that sort of thing. It's a really effective way of upskilling. Level 3, we call it level 3 and level 4. It's sort of under degree level, and that gets people into the market. But the area that's most interesting, I think, for people is apprenticeships, because that's come along since about 2010. And so we had this boot camp model, we had this recruitment company, but it was self-funded. And then the apprenticeship market sort of started to evolve, 2010. And that just, it's been so exciting for the country, so exciting for so many thousands, millions of people now. And we've seen this employer-led program evolve, and people again are going to criticize it because who doesn't like to criticize things? But apprenticeships have made such a difference to the industry that we're in around tech, and they continue to grow in their importance. So we work with the British Computing Society, and we can see the start numbers, and they're still going up. So apprenticeships, which is a 12 to 13 month minimum program where you're employed at the same time, is different from a boot camp. And it's a really exciting thing. We've now got the new government going to Skills England, which is their new Quango, and they're doing a skills and growth levy as an apprenticeship levy. And this is about 4 billion, right? So we're looking at £4 billion of investment in the skills of our country around apprenticeships. And I think that's fantastic, and it needs to increase.
So just for the listeners then, Simon, and just to summarize this as I understand it, so there's two options here available. You can do a boot camp, which is typically 3 to 4 months of your time, and that'll be a self-invested, typically, activity. Contrasted with, and on the boot camp side of things, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a moment, that would, generally speaking, historically perhaps lead into that kind of first line support type role. Whereas with the apprenticeships, and if I'm understanding correctly, that could be a little bit more specialized and as such takes a longer period of time. Maybe that's in somebody who wants to apprenticeship into the cyberspace or networking or specifically around some area of infrastructure. And that can be, I guess, funded, paid, or however that sort of suits. Is that about right? Just to kind of summarize.
So boot camps is a choice of self-funded or government.
Right. Okay.
Right? There's an option now
for government funding there. Brilliant.
And they are, as you say, 3-4 months maximum. And apprenticeships 13 months, but only government funded. And with apprenticeships, you're working whilst you're learning. All right.
So you're getting experience at the same time.
Yeah.
Like
And
further, broader experience is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think apprenticeships, the problem here for people, you had a great guy on your podcast recently called Stuart Salt. What a great guy. He understands the short, the medium, the long term. He's committed to the industry, and he's taken on people and supported them from entry-level roles. And he's done that throughout all the businesses he's worked in, where he's worked with you and I. And he understands the importance of short, medium, and long term. The trouble with a lot of employers, too many, is they do not invest in early talent. They are only looking for somebody with 2 to 5 years experience or whatever. So they're squeezing the market, they're putting the price up for those candidates, and they're not helping the industry. What we need is some inclusive employers who are open to taking on apprentices, taking on people who've done boot camps and supporting them. Yeah, that support in the case of apprenticeships is about 20% of a typical week, right? And that commitment can be motivating for the staff, motivating for their CSR, but definitely motivating for the young person, although apprenticeships aren't just for young people. So I think every company needs to make a commitment here to developing skills. And I hope that the government will tax more people in this skills and growth levy going forward, or change the financials so that more companies are really, if not forced, very much encouraged to look at early talent. So we get this balance of entry-level people coming into the industry.
I think that makes for good policy if you consider it from the perspective of developing the skills that allows this country to remain somewhere perhaps near the top of the league table. I don't know how quite close to the top of the league table we are on a global perspective, but some near the top of the league table. But so that brings us, I think, quite nicely actually onto the changing skill sets that are required now for people coming into entry-level roles. And you talked about AI on the impact of AI on development of programming languages. I referenced the impact of AI on things like the service desk agent. The concept, I think we agree, right, is that the AI technology does the simple, easy stuff, allowing people to focus on the higher value work. But that almost, its very nature, presents a problem for somebody coming in at entry level, doesn't it? Because a lot of their experience and development of the skills that they have is around, I guess you could say, learning the basics. If the basics are taken away, how do we deal with that?
What becomes the new entry level,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have that answer. I have spent a week or so knowing that you're going to ask me this question, and I've thought about it. I've contacted the BCS, the British Computing Society. I've contacted the skills evangelist guy at CompTIA, and what they've expressed is the fact that AI is changing, but it's still early days. So I sort of thought about this with ITIL in mind. We used to get people to, before they go to an interview, to understand at least something about ITIL, 4 hours understanding, so that they have something to say, even though they haven't got the ITIL qualifications, something to say about why ITIL is important, and shows that they're interested in good practice.
An appreciation for it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think at the moment it's the same with AI. That you understand it, that you can sort of use ChatGPT, and you understand some of the issues about its bad use as well as its good use. That's what I would be coaching somebody to do when they were looking at an entry-level role. But the facts are the employers today are still looking for entry-level people. The AI skills that CompTIA are looking to train in are more medium to high level. If you go and look at job boards, you'll find salaries between 50 and 100,000, and you'll see that when they're putting AI into their training programs, they're aiming them at they're aiming to somebody with 2 years plus experience. So for me, AI is changing everything. At the moment, I would still think about doing a skills boot camp, think about doing an apprenticeship, still encourage employers to invest in early talent, but you've obviously got to adapt and change quickly. And so these short courses, that will exist, that the skills and growth levy is going to have more short courses. It's not just going to be 13 months going forward in apprenticeship. There's going to be short courses. And these are the sort of courses that everybody needs to learn in the tech sector as they progress in their career. You know, you can't just get into the industry and stop there. This is a progressive opportunity to continue to learn. So that's the way I sort of feel about it. So I don't have the maybe the answers to what's going to happen, but I wouldn't sit on the fence. I would still go and work in IT if you're technically driven, if you're good at problem solving, if you're analytical. I wouldn't sit there worrying about AI. Get on with it and get involved.
So the good news there is that for anybody listening, or anybody indeed who'd like to sort of make a move into the IT sector as a career change, is that those entry-level jobs that have existed for a number of years now are still available and are still valid. It's a really interesting point because, everywhere you look, AI, Gen AI, anything AI is prevalent, right? It's very clickable content to consume. But what we've seen through some research we've done is that the actual adoption of it in a real world setting is still quite low. So I think there's definitely a good chunk of time left before it takes over and we experience Skynet or something similar. Yeah.
I think you make some really good. By the way, Simon, we didn't expect you to have the answer, right? And in fact, I don't think anyone has the answer to this question, right? Because it is changing so quickly. I mean, 18 months ago, or whatever it was, 2 years ago, ChatGPT, announced itself, and everything it feels very different at one level since then, but at another level, in businesses, it's the same problems that people are dealing with. They haven't necessarily changed massively. So I think we're all learning, right? And what the answer or answers to this conundrum will be. What I really liked today in terms of what you said there was go and use the technologies. If you're looking to get an entry-level role in IT, whether it's in support or infrastructure or whatever development, actually, it's free to go and use ChatGPT now. It's free to go and use, Notebook LM. It's free to go and use Gemini. Get out there and do it, because actually the very virtue of having done that will stand you in good stead with an employer. The fact that you can go into that job and maybe on day 3, not so much day 1, but day 3, say, actually, I can use ChatGPT to make this bit of my job more efficient or more effective, whichever, stands you in good stead. It separates you perhaps from the people that haven't done that. So I love your advice. Get out there and try it, right? Use it, do it, see what happens.
Yeah, they're all tools at the end of the day, right? To be used appropriately. Yeah.
Two things there. It takes me back to the beginning. We used to screen people for the tech support roles, and that program, bootcamp, self-funded. We used to say, have you ever pulled a PC apart? Right? In your hobby, have you ever built a PC for your gaming interest? What have you done practically? What sits inside the PC? What can you tell us about that? So neither say, oh, I don't really like unscrewing PCs or laptops, whatever. You sort of screen them out, don't you? So that's the same sort of thing today. If somebody's not interested, asking why, they probably shouldn't work in tech. And the second thing is this horse race concept. The person that is just a little bit better than somebody else, has done a bit more research, a bit more interest, a bit more enthusiasm, often gets a job. That horse that just a teeny bit, that head in advance of the other horse gets all the money. Yeah. And so it's just important to be a little bit better. You don't have to be able to do everything, but just a little bit better. So that's the two things that were going through my head.
Very good. Well, look, I mean, that's the past. Great opportunity for you to plug your new role a little bit, Simon, and tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, and just as a kind of incorporate into that, I'd love to hear kind of if you could give like a top 3 tips for anybody out there who's, what should they do? How could they approach? And it might be through your company, right? Getting a foothold in the IT sector, because I think everybody appreciates that it's only going to get bigger and more diverse. So the opportunity is massive, right? So yeah, Simon, love to hear your thoughts.
All right. So what am I doing? So I couldn't, because I sold my business. It got to quite a large size, 130 people. I sold it to a private equity company. So luckily, that put me in a position of having some money, and for 2 years off, I couldn't compete in the marketplace for 2 years. That stopped about 2 months ago. So I'm now out talking to other training providers. And I'm working with a company called Solveway. Solveway's 10, 12 people, really small, but really nice people. And I genuinely want to work in a business where I can enjoy the company of each and other people in that business. So, you know,
wouldn't we all, Simon?
And, you know, working in a happy workplace. I don't know, Sonal, you know about Happy Computers, Happy Manifesto, maybe? Do you know the story there?
Yeah, a little bit.
Working in a good workplace for me is very important. I've grown a big business, sold that. That was great fun commercially, but I want to go and grow a business. And I think Solveway is a good example of a company that can grow to maybe 30 or 40 people, that sort of size in the next 5 years. So that's what I'm doing consulting for, and trying to find my way back into the market. And that's on accounting and also IT. So if people are looking for accounting apprenticeships or IT apprenticeships, hopefully they can call me. And then you asked about 3 tips if you're looking to work in technology. I mean, contact me. I'm happy to spend some time talking to anybody about anything to do with careers in technology. You can find me on LinkedIn. But I would be speaking to 2 or 3 providers of boot camps and apprenticeships. I would talk to your friends and family about working in technology, what it is that they like about technology, and make sure there's a match between your interests and what they enjoy about technology. And I would make it a hobby. Yeah, if it's web development, start to look at languages and try to build a small portfolio, understand the sort of skills, technical skills you'll need if you want to work in tech support. Think about the A+ qualification and sort of understand the sort of skills there. So those are 3 things that I'd be thinking about.
Fantastic.
I think, having known Simon for a long time, that's a genuine offer of people talking to you as well. The one thing you've always done, Simon, is taken your time to help people on an individual level. So, and
we'll include a link to Simon's new venture in the.
We'll just put his mobile phone number on the internet. It's fine.
That's right, and the home address. It's all there. Just call around. Sunday lunch, you said, was kind of an open affair, but limited to the first 20 responders. Okay.
Well, if I get a lot of people, just do a webinar. So
or do a webinar. Yep, perfect. Simon, thank you. Oh, go on. Sorry, Simon.
I was going to say my number's on LinkedIn anyway. So
okay. Well, people, you know, anybody, for all of you listening, again, you know, open offer for Simon to have a chat, and he'll coach you through and give you some great tips and advice as to how you can take your career to the next IT or accounting stage.
That's
fantastic.
Very good.
Simon, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. To the listeners, you know, if you have questions for Simon, please do reach out. If you struggle, it sounds like you wouldn't getting in touch with him, reach out to Sonal and I. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to hear more from Simon at some point in the future, I'm sure we can arrange that. But in the meantime, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
See you on the next one.
Thanks very much. Thank you.